Hey there, all you ghouls and goblins. Radio 85.9 proudly presents Horror Zoid with your hosts, Stevie Scares and Natalie Nightmare, talking all things horror from the 80s, 90s, and today. Today's episode is brought to you by Hill House Property Group. You won't find any Flanagan flips right here, just good old-fashioned haunted houses. Call Hill House Property Group today. Welcome back to another episode of Horror Zoid, everybody. I'm Stevie Scares.
And I'm Natalie Nightmare.
And we now return to our regularly scheduled programming. We had fun with the Horror Zoid Awards last week. We hope you did too. And we're back to doing our normal thing, our normal routine. But not really, because today it's a special episode. It's the first part in a 5-part series in which we are going to cover horror throughout the last few decades.
Yes.
And we're starting today with the 2010s. We decided to work our way backwards a little bit.
Yeah, it's a fun way to go.
Yeah, and these are fresher in our memories. The 2010s movies, obviously. We've seen them more recently, most of them at least. And then we can work our way backwards, and it gives us time to study and do some homework and check out some of the ones from the previous decades. We're going to cover the 2000s, the 90s, the 80s, going all the way back to the 70s. And I think we're going to cut it at the 70s. Because although there's some great horror films before that, I think we are not educated enough to really cover much more than 70s.
We're 80s babies, and while that doesn't mean we don't love older cinema, there's just a lot of limited knowledge there for us. So.
Yeah, we're not even going to attempt that. I mean, obviously, as I said in our very first episode, my favorite film of all time, best horror movie ever made, best film ever made, is Psycho, which is from 1960. But if you asked me, gun to my head, to name a few more horror movies from the 60s, I'd be hard-pressed.
Yeah.
It's not that they weren't out there. You know,
Right.
There's other movies I love. City of the Dead's a great one. We've mentioned Peeping Tom on the show before. There are some great movies from the 60s. I just don't think we could devote a whole episode to them.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely talk older horror, like we've, kind of been chomping at the bit to talk about Universal monsters.
Oh, for sure.
And obviously that goes way, way back. But, with this episode, we are talking about just a lot of things that luckily we got to witness through the 2010s and a lot of trends and shifts in the horror movies, period. So we can't quite do that for the 60s.
No, we don't have a lot of firsthand knowledge the same way we do about some of these others.
I'll leave that to the big guys that inspired us.
Yeah, there we go. There's some great horror podcasts out there. We're not going to sit here and pretend like we're the only horror podcast out there. There's some great ones, and we're just grateful you've made time for us in addition to the other great ones that are out there.
Exactly, which leads us into our housekeeping, Stevie.
Yep, housekeeping notes. Make sure you leave us a review wherever you listen to this podcast. Those reviews help us grow and elevate us and push us to the next level. We just want to get more eyes on us. So
we want to be elevated horror.
We want to be elevated horror. That's a great subject you bring up. We're going to get into elevated horror. Yeah, so leave us a review. Also email us at horrorzoidpod@gmail.com. We're available 24/7.
Yep.
Not really. Don't bug us too late in the day. We are old people. But yeah, email us. We want scary stories. We appreciate fan mail, hate mail. And as I've mentioned before, we're going to be launching Patreon this year. So if you have any ideas for content that you would personally like to see that you'd pay for, let us know. We're all about that dollar bill, y'all.
Absolutely. And while you're listening to that podcast, anywhere you listen, by the way, there are going to be 2 links at the bottom there. One of those you can click and actually leave us a voice message. So if you don't want to email us your hate mail and you want to drunk call us at 2 a.m., click that link and leave it. We'll read it, play it on the air. And there's also a link that will take you to financially support us. So if you just want to send some money our way, you like what we're doing, want to see where we go, anything, that would help us kickstart our Patreon, anything like that. So whether you want to leave $1 or $1 million, click that link and support us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for all of your support, guys, so far. These past few weeks, we have grown exponentially. And I don't say that lightly. We've had some great stuff happen to us. On TikTok, we surpassed 2,500 followers. We surpassed 100,000 likes. And we're still continuing to grow. You guys are responsible for that. Clearly, you like whatever you're seeing on TikTok or hearing on the show, and we appreciate that. Also, check us out on Instagram. We've got an Instagram we're doing more stuff on now, too, so go check us out. But, yeah, this has been a huge week for us. We have grown big. We're really closing in on some great numbers here, and that's exciting to us, and that really lets us know that we're doing something right. So hopefully we'll keep going that way.
Yeah. Next goal in sight.
Horrorzoid.com for all of those details, everybody. You stay there, stay updated on everything that we're doing. And shout outs this week. One particular shout out I wanted to give. Somebody reached out to us this past week or the week before on Instagram. And I just love this. This is the stuff that actually warms my heart. I love seeing these messages from people. The listener wrote to us a direct message. We're very grateful for it. Feel free to drop us a DM anytime, guys. But this person wrote, love the podcast, and it's the only way I can get my spouse to understand why I love horror.
And I love this because I literally mentioned this last week, talking about just people who've kind of reached out to me, like friends that have listened to it. And they're like, yeah, I don't really watch a ton of horror. It's pretty limited, but it makes me feel like I can still listen to you guys and enjoy it. And I think that's really cool. So that's kind of how I feel with this, to kind of understand or why they love horror as much as we do. And it's just awesome that you want to be part of our little group and listen to us talk about horror, because it's what we love to do.
Yeah, it means a lot to us. And to piggyback on what Natalie's saying, it's like people have asked us all the time. I think it's the first question we get anytime we're wearing like horror merch or horror memorabilia out is like, why do you like horror movies? And instead of just telling them, we decided to do a 20+ episode podcast that we don't plan on ending anytime in the future.
Nope.
That explains why we love horror. So really, this is just to explain to people why we love horror. I didn't even think about it in the beginning, that this explains to other people why so many of us love horror. So I'm glad we're able to connect. And I always say we're simple people. So I feel like we probably explain it in a way that's easy for people to understand. Like we don't want to, like, I always go back to, we did an entire episode on Rob Zombie. We're not highbrow horror fans here, guys.
No.
We're not elevated horror, the
elitists.
people that are elitists. Yeah, exactly. We're not those people. We're much more casual and fun about it.
There's a lot of what people would call elevated horror that we love, but as we've talked about with A Wounded Fawn, there's also shit that just kind of doesn't land for us because we're just not smart enough to get it the first round, and that's fine. But, we also fucking love Rob Zombie, like you said.
Bingo. I think that describes everything perfectly. Guys, without further ado, we're going to get into the episode now.
We're just all fucking over ourselves.
We are all over the place right now. Without further ado, we're going to get into the episode. And again, this one's going to be a little different than what we normally do. Normally, we pick out a handful of movies and we're just like, yeah, fuck yeah, that's cool, right?
Right, yeah,
and that's what we do. Dope. Yeah, that movie's fucking awesome. You remember when the guy's head exploded? Yeah, that was fucking right on.
It's the coolest head explosion horror movie.
So instead of doing that, we're actually going to pluck some topics and we're going to keep it casual as usual, but it's not going to be about one specific movie or a few specific movies. We're going to go through the decade and kind of the stuff that we noticed as trends and what set the 2010s apart from every other decade in horror. What were some things that were new? What were some things that came back? And what really defined the 2010s as a decade in horror movies?
And ironically, as we were just talking about it, one of our first things is the term elevated horror, and a lot of movies that kind of came with it, like the A24-esque movies, is kind of, it's made a name for itself, A24, from their trailers to their visuals to just whatever fucking ride you're going to get into when you watch one of their movies. But we saw a lot of that come into this decade with, you've got directors like Ari Aster, Robert Eggers came into prominence. I mean, it's heavy hitters, and we're still getting shit from them now.
Yeah.
But I feel like, compared to looking back, the 90s, we didn't have shit like that.
We didn't. No, we didn't have an A24 kind of film distribution company. And I'll be honest, we don't do a lot of research before these episodes. So I don't know when A24 fucking started. I know the first movie I saw from A24 was Tusk back in 2014. Because I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan, and Justin Long and Michael Parks, just an amazing cast of people involved with that movie. So again, I don't know exactly when A24 started, but for me, the 2010s was where I really remember them jump-starting this movement of these artsy-fartsy kind of horror movies. Forgive me for my stupid phrase there, but that's really what it is. They're kind of these art house horror movies. They kind of took themes that you would see in horror movies in the past, but you had to seek out horror movies like this. It used to be was the term boutique almost, where you had to go to usually like one theater in the entire city is showing it. Maybe even if you live in a small town, you're going to have to travel a few towns over if you really want to see these movies. That's what it used to be. You could find these
the little
movies.
art house theater kind of
Exactly.
shows. Yeah.
You could find these movies, you could find these theaters, but it wasn't a big thing. You really did. You really had to make it a mission. If you wanted to see a movie like these movies that we're seeing now that are so prominently displayed everywhere, you used to have to go and hunt for them. And now A24, I sit there and we joke, they're artsy fartsy, they're elevated horror and shit like that, but A24 is really bringing these movies to a bigger, broader audience.
Right.
So all jokes aside, A24 has done something beautiful here.
It has. And I mean, obviously it's not just horror. They have all sorts of movies come out, and one that, even though I've not seen it, I remember seeing trailers for it and thinking it was amazing, but the Marcel the Shell, it's not horror, but it's still fucking weird looking. It's a little shell with an eyeball and shoes. I don't know what that movie is, but ironically, I was looking, and A24 was founded in 2012, so there we go, 2010.
Oh, so they were even born in the 2010s. So
exactly.
There you go. Yeah.
So there we go. We all learned something tonight, because we don't fucking look up shit unless we're really thinking about it. ADHD's hard.
Yeah.
But
it's a podcast.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too, and I know this is a little off topic, but again, we just want to keep it casual. I don't want to feel like we're lecturing people or trying to be the next person giving you the top 10 things you didn't know about this movie. I just don't want to be those.
Yeah, we don't want to be that podcast or those
no
creators
hate to
out
those
there.
Creators, but it's been done, and obviously it works well, and I eat that shit up too, but it's just not what we wanted to do.
Yeah, we don't want to be those people that's here's your top 5 Giallo films that you've never heard of because they only showed in one theater in Italy in 1968, and I happen to buy a bootleg copy at my flea market, so here you go. I'm going to tell you all about them.
That was very specific.
It is, but fuck, I swear, if you look on TikTok right now, there's at least 20 some odd videos of people doing lists just like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. We're not like that, but those people, who love Giallo and loved movies like that and were big fans of, Argento and stuff like that back in the 70s, who were fans of those artsy, kind of international films that you would have to go seek out. A24 again brought that to the masses. So now it's not just a handful of people sending tapes back and forth. It's not people driving 60 plus miles to the biggest town just so they can go to the art house theater and see this movie that's only going to be showing for a day. Now people can see them in mainstream theaters. I mean, we've seen a lot of A24 in the theaters lately.
I was going to say, so one of these we didn't see in theaters, but 3 of the movies that are obviously huge from the 2010s are Hereditary, Midsommar, and The Lighthouse. And,
Can't forget The Witch.
And The Witch, yeah. And The Lighthouse was one of those, we watched it, and there was a lot of, furrowed brow for me. I love that movie, but there's a lot that I feel like it deserves a second watch to kind of gather it or absorb it more, I guess. But it is. The Lighthouse feels completely like one of those movies that would be in some little tiny fucking theater for one weekend. And here it is, on the tail end of the decade in 2019. But, there's other movies that don't feel as artsy fartsy, but it is still...
Like I said, Tusk is one of my favorite A24 movies.
Exactly.
And yeah, it's artistic in its own way. I mean, I will defend it to the death that is an artistic fucking tour de force from Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
That movie was fucking bananas.
I agree.
And only a company like A24 could make that happen. So
yeah.
They're responsible for a ton of hits that we've had over the last few years and even beyond that. Like I said, we named a few of them. Really, the Ari Aster, Robert Eggers movies are going to be the ones that I think that stand out most to people. And then, of course, here in the 2020s, we're seeing a lot more of that, too, in the last few years. One of my favorites was Saint Maud.
Right.
Saint Maud was a great one.
Yeah.
I think they actually filmed that in 2019 or 2018 and released it internationally before it came to us. So technically, I think we can count that for this decade. But no, I know that's one we only saw recently. But great A24, great demonstration of what they have come to be known for.
Right. I mean, they're definitely rolling right into our next decade. Bringing the crazy everywhere they go.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of bringing the crazy, the other kind of big production company that sprung up or really became a powerhouse in the 2010s was Blumhouse.
Right, because Blumhouse was a thing way before the 2010s.
Right. Jason Blum, of course, this Hollywood mega producer, got fed up with Hollywood and working on these big budget movies and not really getting much for it. So he went out on his own, started his own production company. And we talked about it before with our found footage movies and some other themes like that, but it was this little film called Paranormal Activity that Jason Blum found from a creator named Oren Peli, and he picked it up, used his Hollywood connections to get it in as many theaters as fucking possible, and it created this fucking phenomenon of Paranormal Activity movies that were the launch of Blumhouse. And then into the 2010s, Blumhouse continued that, created some of our favorite movies. Obviously, you've got, we'll get to it a little later, but the Halloween 2018, the legacy sequel reboot kind of thing that happened at the end of the 2010s, responsible for one of my favorite movies, Ma. I fucking love Ma.
Yeah, Ma's
that
fun.
Shit's hilarious. Ma is one of my favorites. They did, what was that one about the escape room?
Yeah,
they did the escape room movie. So, Blumhouse responsible for a lot, but I think the one that I remember most where I really realized, like, okay, Blumhouse is this fucking big deal. They were responsible for a lot of Jordan Peele's early work.
Yeah, exactly.
So Get Out, without Blumhouse, we wouldn't really have Get Out. Yeah, that was a fucking trip for me.
No, I totally, it's interesting because Blumhouse is one of those, I feel like a lot of people kind of shit on. They're like, they'll see the logo and they're like, fuck. Because it did kind of explode into this thing where it didn't just have, obviously like Get Out is phenomenal, like way top tier horror for me.
Yeah, I don't think it has any haters.
Right. But, you mentioned Ma and it's like, Ma's fun and it's different. It did different things as a horror movie, but it's kind of one of those, a lot of people were like, it was okay. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like that kind of stigma has kind of hung around where people are like, oh, great, it's Blumhouse. It's going to be shit. But, I mean, they're proving constantly banger, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
movie after movie, it just fucking knocks it out of the park. But yeah, they make a shit ton of movies and they obviously take chances on things that they've probably done since the beginning.
Well, it's just science. The more shots you take, I mean, you're going to miss a few. It's there's nothing wrong with that. But I mean, Blumhouse's mission from the beginning was they're going to make these movies with small budgets. They don't need a shitload of money to make a good horror movie, which I 100% get behind that.
Right.
Because think about the movies back in the day that we loved in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. We'll get to some of them as we go through the decades, but a lot of those were made on these shoestring fucking budgets. These filmmakers had
Texas
no
Chainsaw.
money. Yeah, exactly. Toby
Right.
Hooper, that was a fucking student film. Him and a bunch of guys from Texas, their University of Texas, they get together, drive out to the middle of fucking nowhere and film this movie about a guy who wears people's faces.
Right.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. So yeah, I 100% respect and appreciate and admire what Jason Blum has done by proving that you don't need a shitload of money to make good horror movies.
Right.
And with the fact that they don't need a lot of money to make them, they end up making a lot of money.
Right.
Just because they're
Which is, obviously that's fantastic for those filmmakers. Right. Like that's everyone's worst nightmare. So, ironically, as we record this is the day that M3gan releases. And if I remember correctly, whenever I was looking at it, the budget for that movie is like $10 million, which, it's a nice drop in the bucket compared to all the fucking Marvel Cinematic movies.
Right. $10 million compared to like most of those movies. Like we're also in the age of Avatar: The Way of Water just got released. So
Jesus.
Fucking $800 million fucking $1 billion budget right there. And Megan's on a budget of 10.
Which, as of now, everyone's saying that they really like it. So obviously that's going to be a good 10 million investment there.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the hype alone, that movie's just gonna fucking go crazy. But that's how a lot of the Blumhouse movies were in the 2010s. Yeah. People, we wouldn't see these shitty movies if they didn't do their job right by giving us really good fucking trailers.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were a lot of them that we went and saw, just amazing. But of course, not every fucking movie company is going to have a great movie every time.
No. But when you think about what Blumhouse has done, I mean, the other franchise I was thinking of that I'm really excited and I hope they continue is the Happy Death Day series.
Yeah.
Came out in the 2010s. Fucking love. You and I both love Happy Death Day.
Yeah.
We've not
totally
seen
fun.
Happy Death Day to you.
No.
But we're hoping the franchise continues. But yeah, again, I think what really stood out to me about Blumhouse the most was obviously the Paranormal Activity movies, but Jordan Peele, I mean, it was Get Out and Us came out in the 2010s and really established Jordan Peele also as a fucking heavyweight of filmmaking too.
Yeah.
And yeah, Blumhouse obviously was kind of the rocket that propelled him there. But yeah, he really did. He came into the 2010s, and I think we can't talk about the decade without talking about him. He is, without him, I think the horror genre right now would be completely different.
It would. It'd be curious to see in what little alternate reality that we have, what it would be like if Blumhouse just was like, never mind, I'm done.
Right. Yeah, I don't think we're going to do anything there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. That's another thing we could explore one of these days is our Marvel what if of horror. You know, what if Jordan Peele directed Hereditary and Ari Aster did well, you couldn't do Get Out, but you know, maybe like Us.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's something to think about.
What if we had a snap?
Yeah, what if we had a Thanos snap too? But yeah, it would be interesting to think about. But yeah, Jordan Peele, Blumhouse, huge heavyweights in the horror community, horror genre, horror content. We couldn't do what we do without them.
Yeah.
But one thing that was a big theme with the movies, not just with A24, not just with Blumhouse, but we noticed that films kind of took a step back from where they were in the 2000s.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that we have in our notes here is there was kind of this hangover from the 2000s and what we have come to lovingly know as the torture porn genre.
Yeah.
Torture porn really came into the 2000s with a lot of fervor and a lot of fanfare because you had films like Saw and Hostel that catapulted this new genre where horror had kind of dabbled but really started to punch into and lean into in the mainstream.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting the way in the 2000s we all just wanted like the next big, like obviously with the Saw movies they got bigger and bigger and bigger and there was more gore every time and all these other movies were just trying to copycat that recipe. But it feels like in the 2010s that really kind of died off. You know, obviously we have tons of movies that have tons of gore. And a lot of movies, you know, that even we've talked about just briefly, you know, they have their gore that it feels like it's needed in the movie though. Like it makes sense for the scene. Whereas that torture porn style where it's just over the top, we're not going to talk about Terrifier right now, but it's over the top, you know, has really backed off. Like, it doesn't feel like that's the it movie to do, is to do something like that anymore.
And you bring up Terrifier, and I think that's funny that you mentioned that because
Terrifier was 2016.
Terrifier was 2016, but we kind of go back to what we started talking about a few minutes ago with A24. So they came in 2012, you said. And what they had done, like I said, they brought these artsy movies to the mainstream. And what that did was, okay, we shifted from torture porn, Saw, and Hostel, and all of these kind of just grimy, dirty movies. Again, horror had always been kind of violent, and it was about watching attractive people, you know, have sex and get murdered.
Right.
And that's what kind of the torture porn genre just stepped it up another notch.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Hostel, and like the biggest reason that I don't like that movie is the first 30 so minutes is just like
toxic masculinity
porn and toxic masculinity before it gets into anything. And then that's one of those movies that, like, when I saw it, it felt like it went too far for me. So
I agree.
But it's interesting, you know, we say that they've kind of backed off of that concept, the torture porn movie. But to me, like, what is more jarring, obviously, watching Hostel or like the scene from Hereditary where she's like cutting her head off with piano wire?
Well, and that's what I'm talking about. It's like...
But they're impactful. Like, it's shocking in a different way without just being over the top for over the top's sake. It just feels like a different type of gore, which sounds really weird to say.
No, it is. It's a different kind of gore.
I mean, it's, you know, Hereditary, for one, is a very jarring movie.
Right, for sure.
But I walked out of the theater and I didn't feel as disgusted as I did watching Hostel.
No, I was taken aback. I was almost breathless at
how we were like
stunning that movie was,
and just had to like process Hereditary.
But when you talk about like right now, what we're talking about with the A24 movies and with Hereditary, think about how different Hereditary or some of these A24 movies would be if it was like if by the time we get to the scene where she cuts her head off with piano wire, if we had seen a guy cut his fucking leg off and two people, you know, bent over a jigsaw table and fucking trying to one-upsmanship each other. That scene where she's got the piano wire cutting her head off would have meant fucking nothing. And ultimately, that's where those movies went in the 2000s, was diminishing returns.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to say it.
And it was destined to be diminishing returns. So once you got to the fact where the returns diminished to fucking zero, you had companies like A24 and Blumhouse with these movies that were dialing it back. And like you said, with Hereditary, where it's a jarring movie, but really there's there's 2 or 3 scenes, we'll say, like no more than 5. I know I keep changing the number here, but there's like no more than like a handful of scenes that you can sit there and pick where they're graphic and they're violent and they're gory. And really, even when they are, they're not that gory.
Right.
Because you don't see too much.
Well, see, what I find interesting is, and this kind of leads into, what we were talking about, this decade kind of shifting away from it. We get a lot of more realistic horror or a lot of stuff grounded in reality, but still a lot of, obviously we have all of our supernatural spooks and things, but it does feel a lot more real. Like, we're talking about Hereditary. Nothing to me, we've mentioned it before, feels more real than that fucking dinner table scene.
Yeah. We it's a go-to example for both of us of one of just the most intense scenes in cinema, not just horror, but just cinema in general.
Cinema, period.
Yeah.
And, there's nothing terrifying happening, but it's the most quiet we've ever been in a movie theater.
I felt so uncomfortable.
Yeah, you're just sitting there, you're like squirming in your seat. It's like, yeah, it is uncomfortable because that feels real.
When Toni Collette's yelling at Alex Wolff's character, I'm fucking sitting there and
Peter,
Peter, and I feel like my mom's yelling at me. Like, that's when people say Toni Collette deserved an Oscar for that fucking role, they're not kidding. She really did. It wasn't just like, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, that wasn't just about horror.
No.
That was about her summoning something real, and I use the word a lot, visceral, something that you could feel, something that was tangible. Because when you're, like I said, when I was in that theater and she's yelling, I felt like my fucking mom was yelling at me at our dinner table. I felt like fucking Peter in that situation.
I would say between that and the crying scene, which I think is done really, really well, where it does the whole shift for her finding Charlie in the back seat, beheaded, and Peter just like laying in bed, and it does that shift where she's like laying on the floor like sobbing, like total grief sob
because Charlie got decaffeinated.
Yes. And then it pans to like the camera shifts down as the coffin's going down into the ground, and that whole time you just hear Toni Collette like sobbing for like minutes.
Right.
And there's a similar scene in Midsommar.
I was just getting ready to say that, yeah.
Which, like, just mentioning it gave me, like, head-to-toe goosebumps. Where she's laying on the couch just sobbing after she finds out her sister basically murder-suicides her parents.
Double murder-suicide, yeah.
Alone. And those scenes, I would rather watch all, like, the Saw movies and Hostel movies than to, like, just hear that scene again, even though I love the movie and like I want to watch the movie all the time, but it is one of those scenes that it's just so fucking uncomfortable, but it's in a different way.
You bring up such a good point because I'm with you. You and I, we can sit there and we can rewatch the Saw franchise over and over again.
Yeah, it's like a holiday tradition.
Right, but we have not gone back and really watched Hereditary, Midsommar a lot since we saw them originally. Like, and it's funny you say that because I think there's something fucked up about that you can sit there and show me all of these over-the-top deaths in fucking Saw, and it just doesn't, and I think it's like you said, it doesn't feel as real as what Hereditary and Midsommar feel like. We've all been in a fucking dysfunctional family.
Yeah.
But where Ari Aster takes it to another level is it's not just a dysfunctional family, it's a dysfunctional family where witchcraft is also an element, and is
like
tearing them
demon
apart.
Lord.
Right, and a demonic King Payman is trying to fucking take hold of Peter.
But yeah, like I will admit at this moment, even though it's one of my favorite movies, we have only watched Hereditary once. I've seen Midsommar twice.
Yeah.
Hereditary gets a lot more under my skin than Midsommar, but I think it's just because of the family aspect.
It's hard. It's a hard watch for
sure. There's just a lot of odd tones that feel really uncomfortable for me.
Yeah.
But I love that movie so much.
Yeah. Well, and it's one that deals with trauma. And as we have in our notes here, trauma is one of those things that became a recurring theme with horror. It was like...
We saw so much. It's like it literally went from... obviously, you have probably like zero chance of like going out and getting like kidnapped by Jigsaw. But... you also could like have really bad depression and like see shit like Babadook.
Right. Babadook. You could literally have a dysfunctional family, and you could even have somebody who dabbles in witchcraft in your family. Like those things like that shit feels like something that could happen, even though you're not going to see a dead body floating up to a fucking tree house. You're not going to see that. But at the same time, those themes, those concepts are very fucking real. One that we don't have in our notes, but I was just thinking about that feels fucking real, but goes to 11 and takes it to a fucked up level is The Ritual.
Oh, God.
The Ritual is one we've talked about with our folk horror episode.
And I was going to say, a lot of these are folk horror. You know, we saw a big boom of folk horror, but a lot of that usually involves trauma and definitely religious themes in them. So, you know, you see that with all of these movies, you know, whether it's a demon like Payman or the way that they're celebrating Midsummer and Midsummer. You know, I think the one that I'm looking at that I'm like, well, no, probably not this one. And obviously we can't, you know, we are white as hell. And we could never relate to this, but I know just from reading and seeing people talk about it that Get Out was insanely impactful.
Right.
Obviously fucking terrifying to think of anything like that happening to anybody. But, you know, Jordan Peele is such a huge breakout for the 2010s, and Get Out is just... it's another one I've seen twice, and it makes me uncomfortable every time.
I stand by that. That's folk horror, but we agree to disagree on that one. But I like it was so impactful to me. It was like if gun to my head, if I had to name, you know, my 3 best movies of the fucking 2010s, Hereditary would be there, and fucking Get Out would be there too. So I mean, definitely 2 films that deal with trauma in very different ways, but my absolute favorite, and I've said this on the show before too, best film of the last decade, and probably best film of the 2010s, I'll go so far as to say, is It Follows.
Yeah, which is another trauma movie.
Exactly, it's a trauma movie.
Just in a different way.
Right.
But in this one, I agree. This is oddly a comfort movie. Anytime it's on TV, it doesn't matter what else is on or what we want to do. Like, we leave it on.
Yeah, we have to watch this movie. We like, I love everything from start to finish, from the opening second of the movie to the very last fucking scene.
Yeah.
There is nothing bad about that movie. It is a perfect fucking horror movie to me.
And I know that there's people that don't like it, and I get why. It's just not their vibe, or it's, you know, it's kind of a slow burn. You know, what you see is jarring when you see it and a little scary when you see it, but it's not constant. But it's very fucking unnerving. This creature, I would almost put, or whatever the fuck entity you want to call it.
Yeah, honestly, I think everybody just calls it the entity.
The entity.
Yeah.
Is probably second in line for my most scariest thing next to John Carpenter's The Thing. Because
fuck yeah. I would fucking say, I would agree with that. Yeah. That's up there with fucking John Carpenter's The Thing, easily.
I understand that all it does is follow you. And all it does is walk at you. It's not running. It's not like, you know, actively, crazily trying to get you. It just walks at you. Which is really fucking scary to me.
Especially when it's the fucking old woman.
Right.
Oh my God. The fucking old woman.
It's like the only way that you could survive this thing is flying, like, all the time. Like, that's it.
I guess, but...
Because you would have to get to the airport, get on the airplane, and, like, fly, and just never be where it is, but we also don't know the extent of what this thing can do.
That's true. It
like,
could
if
only
you cross
walk.
a body of water, can it just get there?
Right. Could you travel internationally? Yeah, there's so many what ifs, but at the same time, you're like... by the time that film is done, you have this sense of hopelessness that no matter what you do, you can never escape it.
Right.
Because the ending is ambiguous. It leaves it kind of open. Like, at one point, you're like...
You don't know if it's just someone walking down the street or if they're being followed.
But that's the brilliance of the fucking movie, is you end that last scene and you have that fucking person behind him. You're like, I don't know what the fuck that is.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I think it's so scary. And I mean, the movie, it's beautiful. Like, the way it's set, the music is absolutely fucking 13 out of 10.
Just shout out to Disaster Piece.
Hell
I don't
yeah.
know where that artist came from, but they fucking just knocked it out of the park.
Badass synthy shit. Like, just fucking good music
Horror
for that movie.
and synth go together
Yes,
like
they
fucking
do.
Popeye's chicken and mashed potatoes. Like, I don't care what anybody says. That is a match made in heaven. Horror and synth.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Any kind of synth pop, synth wave, retro wave, just fucking put it in your horror movie, and it's just it's gonna win.
Agreed. Yeah, it follows easily. Best film of the decade for me. Great themes about trauma. And really kind of, I see it and I view it as a very feminist picture because it's about fucking demon, this entity that is sexually transmitted. Like, how, like, that's so fucked up to me, and it's given to her by a guy. He even says he knowingly gave it to her.
I was gonna say,
it's really fucked up.
That's the thing is, it's one of those movies. The first time I watched it, I was like, okay, that's new. Haven't seen a STD demon entity before,
right?
But it's such a jarring, uncomfortable kind of scene. Because you realize, like, they've been dating for a while. Mm-hmm. He knows what he has. You know, he's trying to pass it on.
Because they have that great scene in the theater where he sees it. Oh,
right.
God.
But it's like the fact that he gets her close enough for her to trust him, and then they have sex, and then he gives it to her, basically. Right. So it just transmits to the next person. You just have to go have sex with someone and hope that it doesn't get them, and it just works back up the line. And like, that's scary to me, because even if you pass it on and you know it's been passed on 4 more times, like, you would live the rest of your life knowing that it could get you.
Right, because he says there's that climactic scene where they confront Hugh, and he explains to them, he's like,
if it gets you, it comes for me.
Right, that's how it works. It just keeps working its way back down the line.
Oh, and sorry, Zoids, if you haven't seen the movie, the other reason it's fucking scary is because only you can see it.
Yeah. The fact that, only people who have contracted it can see it. Oh, it's because Hugh can see it, even though he's passed it on to Jay. He can still fucking see it. And you're like...
But Jay's just like seeing this entity that can look like and be who anybody it wants to be. So once it's transmitted with you, it knows everyone in your life. It can look like your best friend that lives 100 miles away. Mm-hmm. It can look like the guy that lives down the street.
It can look like relatives who have passed away long ago. It's fucked up,
man. It's a scary fucking entity. Like, and the movie itself is not particularly scary, and everything is done very well.
Speak for yourself. That movie's fucking terrifying, man.
No, I mean, like, okay, yeah. Like, the tall guy's
he's
fucking
like
scary. Nightmare fuel for me.
Like, the fucking, like, when they're shooting at it, and it's just nothing can phase it, and then it bursts down the door. Fucking terrifying.
Okay, yeah. It's scary, but it's like...
compared to other shit, it could be worse.
There's something about it that it's like, you can sit through it. Like, there's nothing too over-the-top visual. It's more just like, it's spooky shit. You always have good music whenever you see it. Like, there's no crazy... like over-the-top jump scares or anything.
There's not even really any nudity in it, even though it deals with sex.
Right.
And that's the fucked up thing. It's
there's like 3 sex scenes, and they're all as tasteful as they can be.
It's some of the most tasteful sex and horror that I can honestly say I've ever seen.
They all have the blankets, that they did on like sitcom
but
TV
it's honestly
in the 90s.
Like, most of the time I see sex scenes like that in a movie, and I'm like, that's bullshit. But then I'm like watching it like in these, and it's like either I'm not thinking it, or it's like it's not too bullshitty. Right. It's like, granted, still, it's like there's clothing on and there's blankets and stuff, and I still contend that if nobody fucking does that. Nobody does that. It's just the most uncomfortable shit in the world. But yeah, no, it's like, when you look at it, you're not taken out of the story. You're not taken out of anything, because you're watching it, you're like, you're hooked.
Yeah.
Line and sinker.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think it's done so tastefully and so well. So yes, we talked about the trauma themes, but there's also themes of grief and loss, and these even show themselves in movies that deal with the supernatural and the paranormal. Mm-hmm. And probably no greater example of that than this fucking universe of Conjuring movies that we received throughout the 2010s.
First Conjuring is iconic. It will always be the best. No one can shit on this movie.
No.
I know that the Conjuring universe has gone fucking wild, but the first 2 movies are solid. And the first movie does have a lot, with the family, obviously. They pour all the money into this house. And I know it's based off a real story. And yes, we hate the fucking Warrens. But let's just think of Ed and Lorraine in the movie and how perfect they are. And just ignore the fucking real people behind them.
Yeah, I can't get through this episode. Every time I mention the Warrens, I have to specify. I won't go into detail, but look into it. The Warrens were awful, shitty fucking human beings.
Yeah.
And
they didn't sing Elvis to kids in the living room.
No, fuck them. And even that whole case is a load of horse shit. That's another story for another time when we do the Conjuring breakdown. But Ed and Lorraine, fuck Ed and Lorraine. And but yeah, the Conjuring universe, it started with this movie. I want to say it was 2013, 2014. I could be wildly fucking off base with that. But it started with this first movie directed by James Wan, who we fucking love. He's god tier in our level. He can do no wrong.
Bingo.
But James Wan directed this, and it's all based on true stories of the Warrens case files. The Warrens, of course, Ed and Lorraine, as we mentioned, fuck them, but they were world famous paranormal investigators. Demonologists is what was the word that Ed liked to throw around. And they're played by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. And as Natalie said, we prefer to think of the Warrens in that context because Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga as Ed and Lorraine have the absolute best on-screen chemistry of any fucking couple that I've ever seen. Like, if you told me those two were legitimately in love in real life, I'd be like, well, duh, look at them. But yes, Ed and Lorraine, played by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, and I firmly believe if it weren't for the genius directing of James Wan, the amazing acting of Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, and let's throw in there Lily Taylor, who played the mother of the Perrin family in the first movie, and her portrayal of a possessed woman inhabited by the spirit of Bathsheba. Just that movie, amazing start to finish.
It's a great movie.
Amazing.
Visually, I mean, we've talked about our love of James Wan, and this is kind of one of those things where he does a lot of that beautiful film work that we love, where he plays with perspectives and out of the corner of your eye type movement. And obviously gave us one of the scariest fucking jump scares between the fucking music box and the clapping game, the basement scenes. Like
the fucking scene for me is the one where Lorraine is out by the water and Ed comes up to her and asks if she's okay, and all you hear, it's Lorraine looking at Ed, and all you hear is like this sound. It's unmistakable. So kudos to whoever did the fucking sound editing. It is literally the sound of rope tightening. And you're like, what the fuck? And as soon as it cuts to Ed, you see these feet just hanging there as if somebody is being hanged from the tree behind him. And it's just one of the most well done scenes in a fucking horror movie I've ever seen. James Wan is a fucking genius for coming up with that, because while it wasn't a jump scare necessarily, I think it was intended to be a jump scare. I didn't feel like I needed to jump necessarily, but it was jarring.
But everyone's, you get the in the movie theater because, like, you hear the rope and you don't know what you're going to see, and you don't expect feet.
Right, especially they're all decayed and rotted and shit, like they've been there a hot minute.
See, I love that one. Whenever you were like, honestly, my scene, I was thinking of the one where it's in one of the girls' bedrooms. There's the two girls. And, she keeps smelling something. She's like, oh, you farted again.
Yeah,
but it's actually like the common, well-known in the paranormal world is like that kind of stinky, sulfury smell is demonic presence.
The smell of death.
The smell of death. Demons smell like farts.
Demons fucking smell like farts. I'm
they
cool
do the
with that.
scene, and this is something that, it plays on my fear as a child of like, why you don't keep your leg off the edge of the bed. Is like the scene where she gets like yanked down the bed and she like pulls herself back up and sits up and looks around and there's nothing there, and her sister wakes up and there's just that dark void behind her.
Oh yes.
And
oh fuck yeah.
She's like, oh god, I smell it, and then the door slams. Fucking perfect.
And she says, I love when she says right before the door, she's like, there's someone behind you.
Yes.
And it's just so fucking bone chilling. That whole cast of actresses that got to play the daughters.
Oh
like,
god, they're amazing.
Like if that movie didn't have Ron Livingston in it, it'd be a 10 out of 10 for me. He was Jason Clarke for me before Jason Clarke was a thing.
He's pretty forgettable.
I
and
fucking
like,
hate Ron Livingston.
Not the best dad, but yeah, like the kids, the mom, like the chemistry even with the Warrens and the family. There's like the scene where they're making breakfast and everything seems like it's getting a little bit more normal.
Yeah.
And it's just such a good movie. Like,
and what is it with James Wan and filming shit behind Patrick Wilson? Like,
I
we
know.
get the fucking lipstick demon. We get the feet from the hanging. Like,
Yeah.
I swear, it's like if James Wan and Patrick Wilson are in a fucking movie together, they're going to film something behind Patrick Wilson.
Yeah.
So fucking watch out.
I hope we get some shit like that in Insidious 5.
Well, that's Patrick Wilson's directing that. I'm fucking
Exactly.
excited.
Me too.
I hope. Oh God, I'm so excited to see what he can do as a director. It's exciting.
Yes.
The Conjuring franchise. So Conjuring 1, great movie. Conjuring 2 was a decent movie.
Pretty good.
Conjuring 3, which is not in the 2010s.
We like Old Man Wilkins.
We do. Oh, Bill Wilkins. Yeah.
I was gonna say Conjuring 2 is probably one of, even to this day, seeing it like 5 or 6 times at this point. When we have it on, there's that fucking scene where she's fucking with the TV and the remote keeps like moving, or like the TV's turning off, and she like crawls up to the TV to turn it off, and when she does, you see the reflection of Wilkins in the chair in the corner behind her.
Great fucking scene.
It just makes my skin crawl.
Yeah.
He's so scary. Like, I know he's like this nice old guy who's like possessed by Valak and shit to like be evil, but like he's the scariest fucking thing in that movie.
I thought he was scarier than Valak.
I agree.
Except for that fucking scene where Judy sees him in the hallway.
Yeah, when Judy sees Valak in the hallway, and she's just like, "Who's that?" And it just like plays the music.
That scene that was pretty
Valak
fucking
in that
terrifying.
movie's fucking awesome, because like even at the end, whenever she's just like in the corner of the room when like the window like blows out, she's really scary. Obviously the Crooked Man. He's not scary to me.
Crooked Man, yeah.
He's not scary to me at fucking all,
He's
but
cute.
I love. He's cute. His little umbrella.
Yeah.
It's just
I want-
Javier Botet
I
with
want
like
a
a fucking
squishmallow
hat on.
of Crooked Man. I don't know how you do it, but I fucking want it.
I see, and I think the reason why I love him is, first off,
He has Funko Pop eyes.
he does have Funko Pop
He has
eyes.
Funko Pop eyes.
First off, and I don't remember the name of the toy, but the little thing that you spin and you look in it, and it has all the pictures, so you see the moving image.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that like his design comes from a idea of a character on a toy,
Right.
is really cool for me, because like, what's scarier than like having your toys come to life as like demonic figures?
It's like Toy Story, but fucked up.
Right.
It's like kind of like Puppet Master.
But
and
it's
shit.
also like, he's got this cool umbrella, and like the way he walks, and like I know it's Javier Botet, I believe, plays him, and they just kind of did this weird animation for him, so he almost doesn't look real, which is really, really cool to me. But he's not scary at all. I was just like, oh, this guy's really, really cool. And then I found out the Crooked Man actually has its own actual nursery rhyme.
Right.
Like, my
Yeah, that shit
fucking
was real.
Uncles used to like sing it as kids. I'm like, that's fucking
It's
scary.
fucked up. Yeah.
If I heard a little kid singing that today, I'd be like, fuck that kid. They're possessed.
I was honestly bummed out that the Crooked Man movie got canceled. So
Same.
I was really hoping we were going to get that, but it makes sense. The Conjuring universe is kind of getting to a point where, we had some great movies with The Conjuring. We had a not so good one with the third one. We had The Nun, which you and I enjoyed, but unfortunately it doesn't seem like it got the best critical response. Getting a sequel for some reason.
For some reason.
But most people I see talk about it don't view it favorably.
No. But I think aesthetically, it's still a really cool movie.
I like it. It has Thaisa Farmiga in it. And
the
I think
Buried
she does a
Alive
great job.
scene's fucking terrifying.
It is. It's legitimately scary. Like,
Yeah.
And then you've got, Curse of La Llorona wasn't that great.
No, and that was one of those that really kind of kicked off something where we were kind of tired of fucking movie trailers, where I felt like I saw everything in that trailer.
Oh my God.
I was like, cool, I've seen every fucking scene where La Llorona snatches a kid. Thanks,
literally,
guys.
every fucking scene in that trailer was were the best scenes in the movie. Everything
like the
else,
bathtub scene is the scariest scene to me.
The bathtub scene's the scariest
in the
fucking
trailer.
scene, and yeah, you see it already. Like, we had seen it already. It's like the only thing we didn't really see is the priest who ties into the Annabelle movies.
Yeah.
It's like, I think that was the only thing we didn't know going into it. It was like, oh,
Right.
okay, but
And that's just kind of like, oh, okay, it's in the same universe.
right,
Yeah, and I feel like it's kind of shitty, because La Llorona is amazing, of a folk tale.
I was so excited that they're doing a
And-
La Llorona movie, and I know they've done one recently since then that has better reviews than this one.
Yeah,
so
I've
we'll have
seen-
to check
yeah.
that out. But yeah, the Curse of La Llorona, that exists in the Conjuring universe. I believe it was directed by Michael Chavez, who ended up directing the third Conjuring movie, which we did not like that either. So, this guy he's not winning us over.
No, and it's weird, because it's not that they're particularly bad filmmaking, like directing wise, like they still look good, But there's just so much, I think there's a lot of writing there too that's just fucking shit for both of those movies, especially Conjuring 3. But it's like, I would like to see him do something that's not one of these Conjuring universe and see how he does.
Yeah, I'd have to see his work outside of the Conjuring universe before I judge him fairly. But so far, Conjuring universe, he's not winning me over.
Yeah, we're giving you mean eye.
Yeah, the Annabelle movies are fucking dope though.
Yeah,
I do love the Annabelle movies, and I don't think we're gonna talk about them too much right now. But we'll have to do an Annabelle franchise breakdown because honestly, that's one of my favorite trilogies in horror right now.
Yeah, I think that was my favorite part from The Conjuring.
Yeah, and it's funny because the first movie a little weak in the trilogy, but the other two movies are fucking awesome. I like the other two.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I can't wait to do a little Conjuring franchise breakdown, Annabelle franchise breakdown, something. We'll have to do that in the future.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, but another thing we got that was kind of a big theme was Natalie touched upon it earlier with this new generation of folk horror movies. And we did a whole episode of folk horror a few weeks ago. Go back and check that out.
Yeah, if you want to hear us talk about folk horror, most of which I think we talked about were from the 2010s.
Yeah, because there was this resurgence that we talked about. But we mentioned Robert Eggers earlier, and The Witch was what kickstarted his career. And The Witch... we talked about it in the Witch episode.
Yeah.
We talked about it in the Final Girls episode.
So
we talked
anytime
about it,
I can talk about that movie, it's one of my favorite movies.
Yes, you can tell The Witch is one of our absolute favorites. We adore it. We've probably talked it to death at this point, so we're not going to go too in depth. But it was part of this. It was really part of this new genre folk horror that we saw.
Yeah, and I mean it. Again, Witch aside. It is very grounded in reality. It's kind of what we were talking about with all these traumatic themes. Like, what's more traumatic than being kicked out and you're living in the wilderness and your baby gets snatched? Like that. There you go.
but the way the witches are done are also pretty realistic up until the end, of course, because they do have this everything they're doing. It's the reason witches and the witch lore was created in the first place, which is to explain the unexplainable.
Right.
Like, people were dumb back in the fucking puritanical days, and they were pilgrims, like in The Witch. They're fucking stupid, and they believed that, if we don't do this, God will fucking literally come down and kill us.
Right. And there's all of these fucking things out there that they don't, like, we're still discovering creatures in 2023. Yeah. Like, they would see a fucking bear and probably, like, think it was some kind of angel. Like, they shouldn't look at it.
Because you can't convince me that the scene with the son where he's, like, comes back and he's, like, dying is not also something that where some kid could go off in the middle of the woods, have sex with a strange lady, get a disease that kills him because there's no fucking medicine at the time, and they think, and they just said, it's fucking witches and demons, clearly.
I was going to say, the disease is causing hysteria. It's a very big thing.
Syphilis was a big disease that caused hysteria and brain problems and neurological problems, and I could easily see somebody in the puritanical days. Again, a kid goes out in the middle of the woods. He's like, you don't fuck somebody in the middle of the woods that you don't know. Right. Of course, that's a witch.
Exactly.
Don't fucking do that. So he went. He had sex with somebody he didn't know.
But then he
comes
was
back
possessed.
He was possessed. No, he had fucking syphilis, and there was no medicine back then, so it fucking killed him.
Right.
Like, that to me is what happened there.
Right.
And,
but in this, it's a witch. So
right.
Yay.
But that's the thing. It's like, it's so cool the way they take those fucking stories that people created witches for and turned it into this brilliant movie. So yes, The Witch, one of our favorite folk horror movies. Another folk horror movie is the fucking Cabin in the Woods. I had to talk about that one. We talked about that in our cabin movies last couple weeks.
This one's definitely not grounded in reality, but it's part of that big folk movement we were seeing.
It is. It's part of it, but it's folk horror. It's cosmic horror. It has everything to it. Like, Cabin in the Woods is one of those. And it's a comedy. It's horror comedy. Like, Cabin in the Woods it came along in 2011, so it was early in the 2010s. So we were, like we said, we had all these really gory kind of horror movies where we were coming off the end of the 2000s, where we had a lot of these, like I said, pretty casts, pretty people in situations where they were fucking and getting murdered. Like, that was the theme of all these movies, not just in the 2000s, but the 90s, the 80s, the 70s. That was the theme. It was like, you put pretty people in the middle of nowhere, talk about how sex is bad, and then they get killed.
Yeah.
Cabin in the Woods literally took that trope, made it the plot of the movie, and flipped it on its fucking ear, because then we have the twist of they're being watched by these people in
these guys that are basically controlling the climate and lighting and everything of the cabin.
Literally the entire environment.
The tech of this movie alone is fucking amazing.
It's super cool.
I know we mentioned in that episode, I love the part where they try to jump and he just like hits the barrier and you realize like they're actually fucking stuck there.
Yes.
But it's all into offer a virgin or someone pure to their god to appease it, to keep it from destroying the world.
And the spokesperson for this deity is fucking Sigourney Weaver.
Sigourney Weaver, yeah.
Brilliant. Just fucking brilliant. Like,
but also it's not just them. Like, there's shit going on all around the world, because there's like one of the cool things we didn't mention in the last episode for folk horror.
I know exactly where you're going, yeah.
Is where they are watching what's happening in different parts of the world. And there's the one that I really like, where it looks like it's in like a Japanese classroom, and all the kids like band together to get rid of the ghost, and they're like cheering because they won. And it's just fucking hysterical. Like, all the different things in the background that are going on, where it's not just their cabin in the woods, but it's a school somewhere, or a park somewhere, or a home somewhere, where all of these things are going on, and all these creatures and entities are being deployed.
And they're battling like Sadako too, if I remember right. It's like somebody they're clearly battling something that's made to look like Sadako.
Yeah, because we see all of the other things in the cubes that look like things for different movies. Right. So it's almost like saying that they're responsible for like Pinhead getting loose.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because you see the kind of like Cenobite looking creature, or shit like there's like Left 4 Dead zombies and the Shining twins, and it makes you feel like
these cosmic fucking octopi.
Like, these guys literally control what's happening in all of the other horror movies that you're watching.
Right. It's one of the most meta horror experiences that I can remember. I fucking love Cabin in the Woods, and
I would give anything to watch that movie for the first time again.
I agree.
That's
I
up
agree.
there.
That would be one where it's once in a lifetime. Like, you don't forget. You don't forget that movie.
Nope, not at all.
It's fucking tremendous. So yeah, we had a new generation of folk horror. We also had great international releases, which I'm excited to talk about this, because we had some really fucking stellar movies.
Right. And I feel like the horror community, you know, they've always been really open to like international movies.
Oh, for sure.
But it does feel like in the 2010s there was a big boom of, you know, just some big movies that really kind of made their name here. Like, to the point where we're having an American adaptation of one of these.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You're talking about Train to Busan, of course.
Yes.
Train to Busan is one of the best international movies I've seen, period. It's one of the best zombie movies I've ever seen. It's one of the most heartfelt fucking movies I've ever seen. One of the saddest movies I've ever seen.
This is one of those movies you put on to test your new boyfriend,
right.
Your friends, like your date, anything. Because if they don't fucking cry, then you need to run. Yeah, sociopath. Easily. Red flag, run away. We've watched this a couple of times, and I still cry.
Right?
It's a fucking gut-wrenching ending.
I remember the first time we watched it, neither one of us had seen it, and we were at my mom's one night house sitting, and you're like, let's just put this on. I've heard this is good. And I'm fucking like having an existential crisis on what I thought was just going to be a fun weekend of house sitting. Yep. And I'm like, fuck me, I'm questioning everything now.
Yeah. This is one of those movies that, you know, you mentioned like, oh, I've heard good things about it, we should watch this. Yeah. That's what I mean, like, by this huge buzz. Like, everybody knew what this movie was, because people were like, oh my God, have you seen this fucking movie, Train to Busan? This movie's wild. Have you seen the zombies for this? And it was just everywhere. Like,
great word of mouth.
Yeah, you couldn't go on to any website, any social media without seeing it. And when they pushed it to the streaming services here, it just fucking exploded.
It did. We saw it on Netflix, and then we had to own it, so it's been in our collection for years now. But yeah, Train to Busan was one of the best international releases. Of course, came to us from Korea. Received a sequel called Peninsula. Was not as well received as Train to Busan. And as you pointed out, we're getting an American remake. Train to New York, something like that. Last Train to New York, something like that. But it's directed. I forgot who's directing it, but I saw the poster the other day, and it is, I can't pronounce his name, but he's the guy who did the segments in VHS, the Safe Haven, where it's the cult, and he did the cyborg kind of guy in VHS 94. I gotta look. Yeah, I can't remember. I can't pronounce his name, but he is directing it, and I'm so fucking excited because he's already shown that he can do some pretty morbid, fucked up stuff. And yeah, I think it's going to be one of the most fucking exciting releases to come out.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not sure how to say his name. I'll try to say the first part. It's Timo or Timo.
Yeah.
And yeah, he does the ones that I really like that are like set in Indonesia.
Yeah, and he's the one. Is he listed as director for Last Train to New York or whatever?
Let me see.
Yeah, we're gonna take a little break here, guys, so we can look this up because neither one of us know.
Wiki just needed to get their shit together. And the article was really weird, but it is him that's going to be directing Last Train to New York.
That's what I fucking thought. Thought.
I'm like, I know you can't, like, you're so good with names, even if you can't pronounce them. Like, you know who it is.
That's what I fucking thought.
And I'm like, let me go back to this page, and I'm like, okay, filmography coming up, and like you normally see like the list of movies. It's not on there because it's an upcoming thing. It's like kind of tacked on.
Oh, that's bullshit.
So I just didn't see it. But yes, you were right, Stevie. I just want to clear the air. We're not fucking nuts.
We're not idiots. We are idiots, but we're not that big idiots. But Timo, we'll just call him Timo.
Yeah.
Timo is directing Last Train to New York, so I'm really fucking excited about that.
Yeah. Indonesian film director. If you haven't watched VHS, again, like we've talked about it a
he's on
cajillion
VHS
times.
2. He's on VHS 94. And I think he's going to be on another one coming up. Don't quote me on that. I hope so. But I think he's doing another one. He's
honestly, great. The one in 94 was probably my favorite segment.
Yeah, that fucking cyborg shit that he was doing. Terrific.
So good.
Yeah. So yeah, another international release that I really loved and Natalie introduced me to was Raw from 2016. And Raw was fucking rough to watch. But in the best way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I watched this movie by myself quite a while ago, mainly because I kept seeing people say that they needed like barf bags in the
Oh, it was one of those movies. Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, whatever, I'm fine. And I was fine. But if you don't like cannibals, you might throw up.
It is, yeah. Raw it's a cannibal movie. It's about a young woman who goes to college. Her sister's already in this college.
But it's like she's vegetarian.
She's a vegetarian when she enters college as a freshman
and it's like
here. Yeah.
in a veterinary type school because they're like working on large and small animal.
Yep.
And she basically gets hazed and has to eat meat of some kind.
Right.
And from there desires more meat.
Right. She gets a taste and then she just wants more. And it's brilliant the way it's done because it's one of those movies where it's a descent into madness.
Yeah.
I always compare movies like that to The Shining because The Shining to me is like the ultimate descent into madness. So like if you picture that, but it's a young girl who just entered college and it's about cannibalism instead of wanting to kill your family at a ski resort, then yes, that's what Raw is. Because she just goes slowly fucking insane. She starts eating people. She starts eating people's body parts. And it just gets more morbid and fucked up. And you find out it's a whole fucking family affair. And it just goes off the rails so quickly. And directed by Julia Ducournau. Great French director. She also recently directed Titan. If you've seen Titan, that we did.
Yep.
That was a fucking trip of a movie. Really on par with what she did in Raw. And I can't wait to see what else she does because so far the two features that I've seen of her work, I'm fucking excited for way more.
Yeah.
So speaking of international horror though, international horror probably doesn't get any bigger than in 2019, the end of the decade, Parasite. Yeah. It won Best Picture at the Oscars.
Huge thing for a horror movie.
Right. Horror movies don't get a lot of love at the Oscars. Yeah. Like, honestly,
and
it's
a lot of people would probably be like, it's not horror, it's more thriller. But you guys know how I feel about that. If it's thriller, it's horror.
It is a fucking horror movie.
It is a horror movie.
Think about that. What Bong Joon-ho does in that movie. He literally conveys this living situation of this family, which if you don't think that's hell or horrific, then you're not fucking looking at it right. Because that's, in my opinion, I haven't heard him confirm this, but in my opinion, that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to show the horror of their living situation.
Right.
And what they're willing to do to escape that horror. Yeah. And what everybody's willing to do to escape horror.
Yeah.
People think horror doesn't just have to be a burned up guy chasing you in your fucking dreams.
Right.
Horror can be living in fucking I don't want to say poverty, because obviously they still had jobs and they were still making ends meet, but
Right.
it's like they're
But,
living in a rough situation.
You can tell, with the home that they work in, for this super rich family and their living conditions, and even like the people around them, and like, like the street floods, like their home floods, like that's their front door. And anything that they'll do to get out, which is obviously being a parasite to the rich people who are parasites in society.
I fucking love everything about that movie. That's another one where it's like
phenomenal.
I was so glad to see it get the respect that it deserves. First off, Bong Joon-ho also directed The Host, one of our fucking favorite movies. We're going to talk about that in the next episode, in the 2000s. It was a great 2006 movie. Mm-hmm. But he has his roots in kind of these thrillers and these horror movies and shit like that. But he's also done really interesting stuff like Okja. So he's got this really fascinating career of just kind of doing whatever the fuck he wants.
And a really cool mind.
A very
amazing.
Genius fucking mind. Like, he is one of the most amazing, brilliant fucking filmmakers I've ever seen in my life.
Right.
And he's one of those ones where, I know I don't know if we're in the darkest timeline, but we're also not in the lightest timeline. I'm just glad we're in the timeline with fucking Bong Joon-ho movies. Because that guy is fucking amazing.
I remember people were getting mad about a Korean movie, South Korean movie, winning Best Picture at a U.S. award show. And I don't understand that, because I feel like we should just fucking acknowledge all movies anywhere.
Yeah.
If it's something that's so big and stunning the way Parasite is, it should get that acknowledgement. And I just thought it was so fucking cool when it won.
It was amazing to see a South Korean film win Best Picture. It was amazing to see a horror movie win Best Picture. And then I remember when we finally got around to watching it, because we did see it a little later than everybody else, but we saw it around the time it won the Oscar. And I remember we watched it and I was like, this fucking deserves it. This deserves the Oscar. It has such a great statement on, living, lower middle class or in poverty. Mm-hmm. Great statement on the the disparity between rich people and poor people, and what poor people are willing to do to fucking get out of it, man. Right. And not just like one family, but like there's the married couple where they've been fucking mooching and parasiting off of these people,
living in the basement.
Yeah, forever. And it's just such an amazing, wonderful movie. And I know I keep using those words, but it's one of the best films I've ever seen. And I was so happy to see a horror movie get the love and respect that it deserves. Because I think the only other thing in the 2010s that really stood out about horror at the Oscars was Jordan Peele did win Best Screenplay for Get Out. Yeah. So that was amazing. But to see Parasite win Best Picture.
It's like what we talked about last week. Yeah. Like most award shows do like the best film of the year, like at the end. Yeah. And, that was the big thing, is Parasite getting Best Picture. Like it's one of the big awards. Like, obviously, I don't ever want to, put anyone that works on these movies beneath, because it always kind of grinds my gears a little when people are like, oh my God, this movie's amazing. And they don't think about all of the other people that go into it. Yeah. Even though, like, I feel like me and you are very aware of those things, because you mentioned The Conjuring. You're like, whoever did the sound for that rope, like, fucking kudos.
Yeah. I'm a big sucker for sound. Yeah.
And that kind of, that's one of those things that I remember seeing on some like fucking PBS show years ago about like how they do sound effects for movies. It's like a girl and like ripping apart lettuce and shit and like stomping in a room to pick up sounds. Like, that shit's cool to me. And like just everything that goes into that movie, whether it's the music, 'cause the music's beautiful. Mm-hmm. The acting, obviously phenomenal. Everybody loved her little like nursery rhyme thing that she comes up with in the movie. Yeah. To help them remember like who they are and where they're from and what they do. It's top to bottom. There's nothing in this movie that you can ever tell me, oh, this is a bad part. And I'm like, no,
it's not. There's nothing bad about the movie at all. And I love that fucking ending. It's like you and I talk about it all the time. We love good, bleak endings.
I do.
And that is a fucking bleak ending. And it's so fucking tremendous the way he accomplishes that. Just again, like I said earlier, from start to finish, It Follows is a perfect movie. Mm-hmm. Start to finish, Parasite's a perfect movie too. Yeah. So again, just tremendous. A few other things in our notes to cover here. I laugh because the next thing in our notes, we kind of touched upon it earlier, but trailers. there's a very distinct.
Dude, fuck trailers, guys.
First off, fuck trailers. We're like, I saw somebody write the other day. Somebody posted, I think it was on Instagram. Mm-hmm. I was perusing, and I saw somebody said, "Don't watch trailers. Go into movies blind. You'll be thankful you did it." And we've been fucking saying that for years because the fewer trailers I watch, the happier I am with movies. And everybody I hear complain about a lot of movies right now are complaining because of what they saw in the trailer didn't match the movie, or they saw too much in the trailer, and when they saw the movie, it was underwhelming.
Right.
And it's like, you and I have fucking been preaching that since day one. Like, fuck trailers. But
well, even today and yesterday has been an annoying day online because there's been so much for Evil Dead Rise, and I don't want to see it.
I get everybody's excited about the movie.
I do, and I'm so excited for you guys, but it's like, I'm not going to watch the trailer. We're never going to be those people, no matter how much you ask us, who do like trailer reactions.
Right.
Because I just don't want to see them. Like, obviously, we will go to the movie theater. We do see trailers. But a lot of the time, I kind of just look away or just like stare at the wall. Because like I can hear it and it doesn't affect me too much. But I do feel like, you know, you're watching a trailer. They are feeding that to you as an audience to make your ass buy a ticket to go see it.
Yeah.
So they're going to show you those things that is going to hook you into the movie.
Right.
And unfortunately, from the 2010s on, especially recently, I feel like we've had so many movies, like we were just talking about La Llorona, where you see too much in the trailers.
Right.
I want trailers like Nope.
Right.
And, oh God, there was, what's that movie? Tenet. I remember the first time I saw the first little trailer for that. I was like, what the fuck even? I don't even understand anything about the movie. No. But to me, that's what I like. I'm like, I want to know more. The less you show me, the more I'm going to want to go see it. Mm-hmm. And I saw like 10 seconds of an Evil Dead Rise clip, and I just had to swipe past because I'm like, I don't want to see shit.
No, because I went into Evil Dead 2013 blind.
Same.
And I'm so fucking glad I did. Yeah, because it ended up being one of my favorite fucking horror movies.
I used to be like a trailer monger. Like, you know, I'd like get on and like I'd want to eat that shit up. But also trailers were so different back then. You always had the like in a world, two guys. And it's like you had these fucking like kooky trailers, and you don't really have that anymore. And now we just get the other thing we were laughing about is every fucking trailer for a horror movie wants to has the the sharp, short noted like string instruments.
Yeah, if you think about the I Got 5 on it from Us, it's like that was a great example of how it can be done well, but every fucking movie trailer does that now. Everything is the sharp plucks, like the pring, ding, pring,
right.
Ding.
And it's like obviously like with you know, that's kind of like the cover of the song for Us, you know. All these other trailers, they don't really have a song. It might just be part of the movie score. It's not like a remix or anything. And it's just these sharp to like make you feel tense. And like there was a trailer that came on literally the other day, and I was like, there it is.
There it is, yeah.
It's still fucking here.
Fucking sharp
and
strings.
It's like, I get it. Like the first few trailers that we saw, I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. And like the pacing of the trailer kind of builds. Yeah. And with it, so does the instrumentals. But after like 30 of them, I was just like, guys, you got to find something else to make your trailer and your movie seem scary.
Bonus points if when they do the sharp strings and the plucking and shit, glass breaks.
Right.
Did you notice that? Like that was another thing in the trailers. It was like you'd hear the sharp strings like the and it would just be like glass breaking.
Exactly.
And it's like from Blumhouse. Like Blumhouse is fucking notorious. I love Blumhouse with fucking every breath in my body, but fucking A, man. Every fucking Blumhouse trailer with sharp strings and fucking like that pluck, like the blink, blink, blink. It's like,
I think the only trailer that I've watched recently willing was like the first one for M3gan.
Yes, yeah. We watched the first Megan trailer.
I haven't watched anything else past that.
I think the reason I watched that one too is because my expectations were kind of low after the poster came out.
We were also like really digging the dance, and I was just like, I've just gotta fucking watch this.
The dancing, yes, we did get into the dance,
which hopefully next week, you know, since it just came out tonight, Obviously, we're sitting here recording. Hopefully, we're going to be seeing it this weekend, and we definitely want to talk about it next week. But I'm just going to say right here and right now that on our PG-13 episode, we told you about all these movies.
We fucking called it.
That can be fucking amazing as a PG-13. And what have I seen all fucking day?
96% on fucking Rotten Tomatoes, y'all.
All these people going to early screenings, our horror TikTok friends out in fucking California walking out of the theater going, I love it. It is amazing. Or calling it the new Chucky already.
Look, if you're listening to us and you heard us say that first, fucking tell people. Rub that in their faces.
Be like, hey,
Horror
did you
Zoids
know?
said it was going to be good the whole time, guys.
Yeah, Horror Zoid gave me faith in a PG-13 horror movie. Obviously, I know as more people see it, the percent's going to go down a little bit. Like, same thing happened with Terrifier 2. It was like at 99 for like a week or two, and then it kicked down. But I'm just going to say that we told you so.
We told you so.
And we're happy that we got a good PG-13 horror movie.
Exactly.
We have a 15-year-old, and hopefully we can take him to go
we're going to try to coax him into seeing it, so wish us luck on that one. Another thing we got to talk about in the 2010s was streaming. Like, we can't talk about the 2010s without talking about the impact of streaming. I was thinking about it. I was like, well, wasn't that really a 2000s thing? It's like, no. Because, like I said, like I've talked about on the show before, it was 2008 when I was working at Blockbuster. And that was the end of the 2000s. So we got into the 2010s. I don't think I really started getting into Netflix until
2008. I think people were still getting discs from Netflix.
People still are getting discs from Netflix.
They are.
Let that fuck your brain for a minute.
I think that's pretty cool though. Like, keep it open
Let
for
that
the
fuck
people
your brain.
who live in the middle of nowhere, who have a hard time getting internet and have to rely on discs. Like, that's cool.
That is cool. They still offer it. You can still do it. But yeah, in 2008, we were having people return those Blockbuster, because Blockbuster had their own Netflix-y kind of DVD rental thing. So we still had people returning that shit to us too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had to think about it. I was like, I didn't really get into streaming and Netflix until probably like 2012, 2013 is when I really started getting into it.
Same.
So yeah, 2010s, I mean, it fucking blew up. Like, one movie I was just thinking about that I would not have seen had it not been for Netflix in the early going was Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Oh my God, same.
Yeah,
I watched that on Netflix.
Yeah, it was like, I'm talking like early Netflix, like when you had it on a Roku device, it was just a gray background and the red bar at the top, and you just were scrolling through tons of fucking rectangles.
Yeah,
tons of fucking rectangles. There were no movie previews.
I was gonna say there were a few like category bars. And then that was it.
Yeah.
So, like, take out the previews and all the background shit of Netflix and just leave the bars. That's what you got.
That's it. But I remember coming across this movie called Tucker and Dale versus Evil, and fuck, man, I had to see it. It sounded great. Alan Tudyk, Tyler Labine. It's a fucking horror movie. Are you kidding me? And then it turned out to be a horror comedy. Just stellar. So,
we also got Shudder in 2015. And while we've only been Shudder people for a couple of years now, I know it took them a while. I remember seeing ads for Shudder all the time.
I thought it was a rebranding of Chiller.
So did I.
Like, I'm not gonna fucking lie. Like, if you would have told me, like, oh, Chiller rebranded as Shudder,
dude. If someone knows something, because I remember I would give hours of my fucking life to Chiller.
Chiller was amazing.
It didn't matter what show was on, what fucking cheesy movie, because they were so good at just playing like absolute fucking camp B movie shit.
Oh, it was great.
But I remember a lot of the ads on Instagram for Shudder being targeted at me. And I was just like, I mean, it looks like their library's pretty small. I don't see a lot of big titles or anything, but they were on my radar. Like, I think they probably were on for a lot of people.
I've always circled the waters.
Yeah. And then a couple years ago, I finally ended up getting it, and it's fucking amazing. There's so much good content, always good new movies. Just added amazing fucking movies as of today, like The Possession.
Oh, I can't. Yeah, I'm so excited about that now.
You know, you talk about the streaming kind of opening up things. You know, Shudder brought Joe Bob Briggs back. You know, who he's been on air for fucking years.
Yeah,
and
he was on the Movie Channel. He did Monster Vision on TNT.
Exactly.
Now, thankfully, like you said, we have him on Shudder on The Last Drive-In.
Yep.
Yeah, if it weren't for Shudder and these streaming services, we wouldn't be able to enjoy this every week.
Yeah, because, and you know, not to kind of bring it down, but of course, Shudder is only, you know, horror movies. And so it's given an opportunity for, you know, there's so many Shudder originals. You know, we talked about A Wounded Fawn and Glorious from this year. Mm-hmm. And, you know, those may not have been picked up by Netflix. Netflix is huge, and they've got a lot coming at them all the time.
Well, and if it did get picked up by them, it would have probably fallen under the fucking radar.
Right. Whereas, I love having something so specific as horror, having its own service. And I can't remember the name of the other one now. There's a new one that Terrifier 2 is on.
Is that the Dread Central?
Maybe?
Screambox.
That's what it is.
Yeah. It's Dread Central, but they call it Screambox. Yeah.
And I need you guys to stop making like multiple things because I don't have enough money to have like 80 subscriptions.
Yeah.
Because obviously the horror ones want to kind of latch me in. But Shudder's been amazing, and it's given so many amazing directors the opportunity to have their movies out. One of the huge ones that I hate that we didn't talk about at all last week, being Hellbender. Like,
oh yeah, fucking Hellbender,
small movie,
dog.
small budget, phenomenal fucking movie. Like I said, I already mentioned Glorious. Glorious was my underrated movie of the year. I love that movie.
Yeah,
and that's what Shudder gave us.
Yeah, Glorious and Hellbender were two of the best from 2022. And
yeah,
Shudder just keeps getting stronger. They've got the VHS movies under their umbrella now, which is exciting. I can't wait to see VHS 85 is going to be out, I think, this year even, 2023. Yes. So I'm fucking pumped.
Stoked.
David Bruckner, I think, is coming back for it. Gigi Saul Guerrero is going to be on it. It's fucking dope. So yeah, Shudder came along in 2015 and really revolutionized horror for us because, as Natalie said, it gave these smaller filmmakers a platform just for horror. And not just, discovering new horror content, but you get to rediscover old stuff. Like,
oh my God.
That's how we watched Black Christmas this year was on Shudder. And all the Silent Night, Deadly Nights are on there.
The amount of classic older movies on there is mind-boggling to me. We talk about not having a lot of knowledge and, stuff that far back, but there's so much there. You could just sit and watch fucking weeks at a time and you'd be like, I know everything there is to know about the 40s with horror movies.
Yeah, last year we watched Haunting of Hill House a few times, or House on Haunted Hill. God, I fucking get those mixed up all the time. But yeah, we watched...
Speaking of Haunting on Hill House.
Yeah, speaking of, that's actually one thing we do need to touch upon.
It's another thing that gave birth in the 2010s was the Flaniverse, thanks to Netflix, which obviously I think it was 2018, was a fucking, it's
I'm gonna push up my glasses here and I'm gonna be an Uber nerd for a minute because, like, excuse me, but the Flaniverse really started in 2016 with Hush, which was also a Netflix original. It's like, I know Mike Flanagan recently left for Amazon Prime, but his roots are in fucking Netflix.
Which, like, part of me was really sad. I was like, no, don't.
Yeah, because it feels like the ending of something. You had Hush. You had Hill House, Bly Manor, Midnight Mass.
Don't get more Midnight Club.
Yeah, Midnight Club.
As of now, we don't know. Things could,
No, he made it pretty clear.
Yeah, I guess he did.
Because he came out and gave the whole synopsis of what would have happened in season 2.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of sucks, but at the same time, we are also getting Dark Tower this year, so that's pretty fucking cool. I can't wait for. Well, no, we're not getting it this year, but it was announced this year that we're getting Dark Tower. So it is exciting to see Mike Flanagan. We know he's a huge Stephen King fan. We know he loves doing those adaptations of King's work. And Stephen King trusts him very much.
And I think Fall of the House of Usher is still slated for Netflix.
Right. That was still part of the agreement before they parted ways, was that they had House of Usher. So that'll be fun.
I'm fucking excited to get that.
I'm super pumped for that, too.
Give us some good haunty, spooky shit.
Well, that'll be his final chapter on Netflix, it looks like. Yeah. So we'll see how he goes out. Will it be... Haunting of Hill House, or will it be his first dud for Netflix? Wouldn't that be funny if he just takes a shit on their carpet on the way out? He's just like, oh, hey, by the way, here's a fucking flaming turd called Fall of the House of Usher.
I think it's gonna be brilliant. Obviously, he's gonna have all of his. Yeah, it's Mike Flanagan. We love him and all of the people that he works with, and I mean, I'm not a fan of Amazon, obviously, and I don't want to fucking go to Prime. Like, we barely watch shit on Prime. It's like randomly we're like, well, it's on Prime.
I guess we can fucking watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not the service that I pull up to look for stuff.
No.
But if Flanagan's on there making, and I mean, come on, if someone was like, hey, Dark Tower, and you're like, yeah, fuck yeah. Like, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, I want him to succeed in absolutely fucking everything. Well, obviously he's succeeding. But just like, I want him to move on and be like the biggest, baddest, fucking best there is. Because, his movies are amazing.
They are.
Obviously. But his series, there's something so special about them. Like Haunting on Hill House is one I've watched personally probably 8 times.
Well, he does episodic storytelling so well.
So well.
I think he is one of those filmmakers who has taken the TV medium and found a way. It's like, oh, instead of giving me 90 minutes or 2 hours to tell my story, you're going to give me 8 fucking hours to tell the story.
I'm going to correct you right there, Stevie. It's not an hour and a half for a story. It's an hour for story and a 30-minute monologue.
That's fucking true with Mike Flanagan. It's always about those monologues, baby.
And that's absolutely what I want. Like, I love the monologues. I know there's very few people I've seen who are like, another monologue. But I'm like, yes, give me another 60-minute episode that has a 15-minute monologue by your fucking beautiful wife.
I mean, he's going to get the opportunity. Gunslinger and fucking all the Dark Tower books are very heavy, very fucking heady and very cerebral kind of fucking books, and he's got a lot ahead of him. I'm sure we're gonna get some great monologues from him, and I'm like the reason I'm stammering right now is because I'm literally going through in my head like this is gonna be fucking nuts. Like I don't think you guys are ready. This is gonna be Mike Flanagan's Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I mean he's basically probably my favorite director at this point.
He's one of the best directors, and who else would you trust with Stephen King right now?
Exactly.
Like, he's the only person. If you're going to do King adaptations, it's got to be Mike Flanagan.
There are so many people who are like, I wasn't really a fan of The Shining, but I really liked Dr. Sleep.
Yeah, a lot of people like Dr. Sleep that did not like The Shining.
Right.
I love both, obviously.
And I know that they're both...
Shining is my number 2 movie.
They're different, obviously. Stanley Kubrick is vastly different from Mike Flanagan. But Mike Flanagan does something so right by Stephen King. And just the way, he's taken this classic fucking literature and puts it into a TV series. It's like, out of anyone doing anything, like I wish he could do all of the Stephen King adaptations. Yeah. Well, because he's a writer and he's good at these things. I just feel like he does it right.
Well, you bring up a good point. Like, he's not just adapted King, but he adapted Shirley Jackson, Turning of the Screw for Bly Manor. Midnight Mass was an original, and obviously he's doing House of Usher from Poe. So I mean, he's the king of adaptations at this point.
It's not like he's just taking something that was written in like 2010 and making it into a show. It's like he's throwing him back.
He is. I mean, he took one of my least favorite fucking horror movies and did a prequel that I would have not fucking cared about, but it made it fucking amazing in fucking Ouija. Like, I fucking hated the Ouija movie.
Yeah, I did not care for Ouija
Origin
at all.
of Evil.
Like, Ouija was like, it was fun, like cheesy horror.
Yeah.
And
it was barely that. I fucking hated that movie.
But the second one, you're right. The Origins or whatever.
Origin of Evil, yeah.
So fucking good for no reason.
For no fucking reason.
I don't know how he did it so much better. Yeah. But he did.
Yeah.
Kudos that's just fucking cool.
Yeah, kudos to Mike Flanagan. He's always knocking it out of the park.
Sorry, we got really off track. Anytime, I can't wait to just talk about Mike Flanagan.
It's going to do a whole Flanagan episode.
It's probably going to be like a
We've been teasing that from the beginning. We've been teasing that from the beginning, but we promise we're going to do a whole Heroes of Horror Zoid Mike Flanagan episode.
Yeah.
The last thing we want to talk about, because this is really transitioning into the 2020s, is legacy sequels.
Right, and I think this is kind of a good ending for this episode because we're talking about, Shudder starting in 2015. Obviously, Netflix has been around forever, but Flanagan really kicked off towards the end of the 2010s.
Yep.
And so did a lot of these legacy sequels. We got Halloween 2018, and I feel like it lit a fire somewhere to just go do a shit ton of movies like this. Because, for this year, we had Hellraiser, Texas Chainsaw, and a Scream movie.
Yeah.
And I think that's really fucking cool. Like,
we had Halloween Ends. So I mean, it's like we continue that legacy sequel that started in 2018. It's legacy sequels are something that we've seen a lot more of in the last few years. Candyman in 2021, great legacy sequel right there. So I think it's going to be more remembered as a 2020s thing than a 2010s thing. But it really started. It has its roots with, for horror at least, with Halloween 2018. And Dr. Sleep is another great example of a legacy sequel coming, he didn't have to connect that to The Shining. He could have literally just done an adaptation of the book and gone a completely different direction, but it was important to Mike Flanagan to stay true to the source material of both The Shining and Dr. Sleep.
Yeah.
And fucking, it turned out amazing. So it's like one of the best examples of a legacy sequel. I think Halloween 2018 is another great example.
Halloween 2018 out of all three is just a solid fucking movie.
It is. Yeah,
It's kick-ass Halloween movie.
Yeah.
I don't care what you think about the new movies, and I know that the second and third kind of shifted off a little bit compared to this first one, but Halloween 2018 is just such a fucking powerhouse of a movie. Like,
yeah, when
Michael's
you look
scary,
at that, yeah.
everything's scary, the kills are good, the music's good, it feels nostalgic and it feels cool, it feels like a perfect continuation. I don't have much to complain about with this movie, as I do the other two.
No. If you look at Halloween 2018 in a vacuum, it is easily just a fucking one of the best horror movies that I've seen.
Yeah.
One of the best Halloween movies I've seen. One of the best Michael Myers movies I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Halloween 2018 is... I fucking love everything about it. And I enjoyed kills, and we enjoyed ends, and we've told people several times, quit bitching about it. Could be so much fucking worse.
Evil dies tonight.
It's not that bad.
No,
it's not that bad.
It's fun.
But yeah, Halloween 2018 in a vacuum is one of the best. And I see a lot of people say that if they would have stopped with just that one movie, or things like I saw people say, what if you flip the movies and you do them ends, kills, and Halloween 2018? That feels like more of a satisfying fucking... there's somewhere there's got to be a super cut of all three movies that makes it make sense.
Yeah.
But I get what they're saying, because 2018 was head and shoulders above the other two movies. Mm-hmm. But man, it's like it was just so beautiful to see Michael Myers back on the big screen, Jamie Lee Curtis back as Laurie Strode, not getting killed, so then that Busta Rhymes could fight him with weird kung fu.
Yep.
It was great to see that.
Absolutely. Great. It's just exciting to think about. Obviously we want to do this forever. We want to do this as long as we can. And I think it's going to be really fucking awesome one day to sit down and it's 2030 and we get to talk about the 2020s in horror and how many more Flaniverse we'll have and how many more of these legacy sequels. Because, we've had so many, like we mentioned the ones just this year, and we've also even had, we have TV series like Ash versus Evil Dead and Chucky and these things. And I love to see how...
we got Evil Dead 2013. Great legacy sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then obviously that's gonna, we just got the trailer for Evil Dead Rise that we got in this year. And it's just so cool. And, I know there's people involved, like Bruce Campbell's involved, and obviously he's been involved forever. But it's cool to see all of these new minds take horror and continue it somewhere. Yeah. Because Flanagan didn't just start by, doing these huge fucking movies, but Dr. Sleep was huge for him.
Right. He started out with some smaller movies. There's that movie Absentia that honestly we haven't even seen. We're a huge Mike Flanagan fans. So yeah, it's like you're right. He didn't start off doing these mega big motion pictures, but he got his start, and now look at him, he's doing amazing shit.
And then we get his own mind, these original ideas that he's had with his movies and with the shows, and it's just so exciting to think, we're beginning of 2023, what the rest of this decade's going to be like. Obviously the 2020s have been kind of shit. So far we've had a lot of movie delays. I mean, God, how long was it before we saw some of the movies that we got?
I mean, how often were we hearing about my mom tell us about Top Gun?
She's like, I'm going to go see Maverick. And then it gets pushed back. And then the pandemic kind of starts, they start opening things up again. And she wants to go see it. And then it's gone again.
Right. Yeah. It was
tons of movies.
Tons of movies got delayed. Yeah. 2020s. I think when we do a 2020s episode here, and however fucking long it takes us to do that, it's going to be interesting to talk about the beginning with the pandemic and everything and how that affected cinema, because that was a huge fucking crucial point and everything. It was like it like the world stopped for a while.
It's one of those things, and like, obviously I know the pandemic is a heavy subject. Obviously we're still in it.
Right.
But there's something that as such a huge fan of cinema and movies, that was so sad to me all the time. I work right across the street from a movie theater, and it's one that we always go to, and just seeing it for so long with no one there, no lights on, like sad. It always has these cool, beautiful lights on. It was just so heartbreaking for me. And then, you're reading articles and you think about all of the people who their job is making movies and they can't make those movies. Yeah. And like all of the things that was affected and the way it's going to affect cinema when we look back at it is mind-boggling. Even, movies like Terrifier 2, they talk about how it affected, they're in the middle of filming. All of these protocols that they had to put into place to figure out just how to make the shows and keep shows going and keep making movies.
Just to have people keep their jobs. Like
exactly.
It's fucking crazy to think about that. But yeah, as we end talking about the 2010s, I mean, we have to start where 2020 started, and that was the pandemic. So yeah, I mean, obviously we're gonna work our way back now. We got a lot ahead of us with the 2020s, and we're gonna be living it. And you're gonna get the best of every week because we're gonna be talking about this shit in real time.
2022 was a hell of a year. If you haven't listened to our Horror Zoid Awards from last week, be sure to do that, because even though we're only 20 some odd episodes in, we had so much fun talking about 2022, and it's been such a huge year for horror that I feel like, we think it starts off really low, but maybe it's going to start kicking up into high gear here soon.
I mean, we're starting with fucking M3 here in the beginning of 2023. It's an exciting start. But yeah, that was our trip back to the 2010s. It's been a lot of fun, and I can't wait to do the 2000s next. So
it's gonna be wild.
Yeah, you guys are going to be along for the ride with us for this 5-part series that we're doing, looking back at the best decades in horror.
Absolutely.
So yeah, thank you for joining us, guys. And with that, we'll leave you with this.
Hey, want to play hide and clap?
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes drop every weekend. Follow us on TikTok at HorrorZoidPod and send emails to horrorzoidpod@gmail.com with your thoughts, questions, and stories for us to read on a future episode. To all our Zoids out there, stay scary.